On this edition of the Rev Cooks, what do you do when it's just so hot outside? Well, you do what you should do. You find something that's gonna make you chilly. All right, so today we're making some chili. Chili is one of those classic great meals that can take like not super long to make, but if you get the balance of spices just right, it's absolutely delicious. It took me a little while to sort of dial in to the chili recipe that we use. I sort of experimented around a little bit, but I think this is a very classic, simple chili. It's going to use a lot of canned tomatoes and the like, just to make it a little bit easier to do. It is one of those weeknight sort of meals that you can make because you really just got to sort of put everything together and let it cook for a little bit, and then you're good to go. So the first thing you're going to want to do is we got to start by generating our sort of spice mix that we're going to use. That way it makes it a little bit more streamlined when we actually get to the cooking process. So let's get going. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get our spices going here for our chili. And so there's just a few spices you're going to need to use. We're going to start off with 2 tablespoons of ground cumin. Cumin is very potent and powerful, but you want your chili to have a lot of bold flavor. So 2 tablespoons here. Man, I can really smell that stuff. Woo, boy, that's good stuff. Okay. And then to that, we're going to add 1.5 tablespoons of garlic powder. I use granulated garlic, basically all the same thing here. So let me kind of wipe this guy out real quick here. All right, no sense in making more dishes if we don't have to. It's just a dry ingredient, so it'll just powder right out. So 1.5 tablespoons of garlic. So there's 1.5. You can obviously add more if you like your chili a lot more garlicky than others. You can obviously adjust these however you want. This is just how we do this, okay? 1.5 teaspoons of whatever brand of salt that you like. This is sea salt. You can use sea salt, Himalayan pink salt, iodized salt, whatever works. So this is a 1/2 teaspoon measure. So we're gonna do 1.5 teaspoons. So that's 1 and then the 1/2 teaspoon of salt. A lot of the other parts of the recipe, the other canned, the canned beef broth, the canned tomatoes and whatnot, we typically get with low or no salt. So this is kind of like we can control the salt content a little bit more. If you want a little saltier, obviously you can make it more salty, all right? And then we're gonna add to this 1 to 2 tablespoons of chili powder. So the reason that the chili powder is sort of questionable, whether it's 1 or 2, is it depends on who you're making it for. Chili powder is very strong, also flavor. When I first started making it, I would use 2 tablespoons, and then some in the family said, well, that's a little bit too much, chili powder. It's very strong, so can we do a little bit less? So I decided to do a little bit less. This is like 1.5 here, so let's put some of that bad boy back in there. Okay, so I go about a 1, maybe a little bit more, but 1 to 2 tablespoons of chili powder. That's got to have good flavor. But again, that sort of depends on your personal preference. And then a little kick, a 1/2 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. Our particular brand of this chili is fairly spicy, but I don't really know, whether or not it's actually fairly spicy. I mean, it makes me sweat when I'm eating it. So 1/2 teaspoon for me and the family here. But if you like more, add more. If you want it to like blow your socks off, maybe a whole teaspoon. If you want it to be more mild, then maybe no cayenne pepper. I mean, whatever you want to do. This is your chili. Make it how you want, okay? And then a 1/2 teaspoon of ground black pepper. So I don't really measure the pepper. Pepper's kind of just good in volume. So, just kind of keep grinding this guy up until you think you got about a 1/2 or whatever works for you. But I like fresh ground pepper. So anywhere from a 1/4 to a 1/2 of a teaspoon of fresh ground black pepper. Okay, that looks like that's about good for us. What we'll do then is we're just gonna kind of mix this stuff together. Not that it really makes a huge difference. It's just kind of one of these soothing things that I like to do. Like, oh yeah, nice mixed. Smell that. Ooh, yeah, I can smell that cumin and a little bit of that chili powder and all of that. So you might see a few little pockets of cayenne. You might want to break those guys up so that you don't have like these little cayenne pepper explosion pockets in your chili. So I like to mix this up so that we have it ready to go. So that way when we're ready to add the spices to the rest of the chili that we're gonna make, we just sort of dump it all in and we mix and we're good to go, okay? So we take that spices, we make the spice bowl and we set it aside and then we get on to the rest of the chili. Okay, so now that your spice mix is ready, we just need to kind of prepare the rest of the stuff. I like to kind of get it all ready ahead of time before I really start cooking anything, so that way it's sort of a, you know, can be dumped real quickly. So we need 1 medium-sized yellow onion, and we're just gonna dice this guy. Not a big deal. Dicing onions is, you know, simple enough task. We just gotta make sure we get it done properly. Make sure you get all these gross skins and stuff off. That guy looks okay, except for a little bit nasty on this back part, so I'm gonna get rid of that. Okay, and then same thing here. Kind of this is a little bit of an older onion. It's been sitting around for a little bit, so it's definitely seen its life, exceeded its life expectancy on parts of it. So I'm just gonna do a nice medium dice here on these guys. Okay, so if you've seen any of my other videos, you know this is kind of how I do this. Whether or not it's the perfect way to do it, doesn't really matter to me, because, you know, this is how I do it and it works for me. Same thing for you. If you have better ways, if you want to use a little mandolin or a chopper or whatever, hey, you know what? I ain't gonna get mad at you. You gotta do your thing, dog. So let's go ahead and get this other one. So the whole onion here, obviously with all these recipes, you can scale these guys up or down if you'd like. This one's a little harder to do that because you are using a lot of canned goods, but you can always substitute that for any of the same things that you need fresh, you know. So like if you know how to make your own tomato paste, or you know, the beef broth or whatever else is going to go in here, then you can just substitute this way. So 1 diced onion, okay? So I'll put that aside over here near the pot I'm going to be cooking in. You're also going to need 1 can of diced tomatoes, about 15 ounces. It doesn't have to be exactly 15 ounces, but 15 ounces is like the recommended size. This guy is like 14.5 ounces, close enough. So I'm gonna go ahead and open that guy up. You wanna leave the juices in that, put that over by where you're gonna do the cooking. And then 1 15-ounce can of tomato sauce. You know, the same kind of deal here. If you don't get the right amount, it's not the end of the world. You know, this guy is, you know, a 15-ounce. You can use a little bit less if you want, a little bit more if you want. It doesn't really make a massive difference there. Okay, then we need 1 can of tomato paste. So this is a 6-ounce can of tomato paste. So we'll go ahead and open this guy up. And this guy's got a little grabber here. All right. And then we want to make sure we get all that goodness off that. So again, 1 6-ounce can of tomato paste. We'll put that aside. And then we need 1 to 1.5 to 2 cups of beef broth. So I'm just going to go ahead and go with 1.5 cups here. So you can, generally speaking, if you just have a can of beef broth, you can just toss a can of beef broth in there. That's all good too, okay? So 1.5 cups of beef broth. We're gonna put that again over by where we're gonna do our cooking, okay? And then 1 can of kidney beans. You can use a can. I just made these kidney beans fresh this morning. I just tossed them in a crock pot. It's a 1/4 pound of kidney beans. I threw them in a crock pot with some water to kind of cover them, well, a little more, maybe a couple of cups of water. Turn that little crock pot on for about 5 hours. It cooks them up nice. If you want to use a can of kidney beans, feel free to use a can of kidney beans. It's a little bit cheaper to go ahead and use you know, the dry ones that way. So other than that, that's pretty much everything we need to get started. All we got to do is start cooking some stuff up. So let's get after it. Okay, so now we're ready to start getting some cooking done here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our pan, some sort of a soup pan or whatever you really have around. We're gonna put 1 tablespoon of the oil of your choice here. I like avocado oil, but really any type of oil that you prefer would work. So we're gonna go ahead and put that in there. We're gonna heat that stuff up, so turn it on to sort of a medium high. And we're gonna let that get a little bit high, maybe a little higher than medium high, you know, it just depends on kind of like how quickly these things will go. So I'm gonna let this heat up for a couple of minutes, and then we're gonna start doing our cooking. Okay, so we're starting to get a little steam and heat right here, so we know our oil is ready to go. So to that, we're gonna go ahead and put our chopped onions that we chopped earlier. So put these guys in here. Yeah. It's always good stuff here. Okay. And we're gonna cook these guys down. Maybe a little too hot here, that's fine, we'll turn it down a little bit. We're gonna cook these guys down for about 5 minutes until they just start to break down and maybe get a little bit of a browning on them, okay? At that point, we're gonna add the beef. You can use any sort of style of beef that you'd like. You know, 1 to 1.5 pounds, again, just depending on how much beef you want in your chili. So we're gonna let this guy cook down a little bit, and we'll check back in a sec. Okay, so it's been about 4 or 5 minutes or so, and you can see that the onions are starting to get more of a yellowy color to them, a little bit of browning on some of them. That's kind of where I like them. You could go further, or you could go less far. It just depends on, again, personal preference. That's kind of how cooking works with a lot of things, like what do you like to do? So once I'm at this point, I'm gonna add 1 pound of ground beef. Again, you can add, I've done it with a pound and a half, you know, but this time I'm gonna do a pound. So I'm gonna take that, break that ground beef up here. And when you're breaking this ground beef up, you want to break it into basically the size of chunks that you want in your chili. So if you like a real fine, you know, chunks of ground beef in your chili, then make fine chunks of ground beef. If you like bigger chunks of ground beef, then break it to bigger chunks of ground beef. Okay, so we're just going to do that. Break this guy up, get him mixed in real nice with the onion here. Okay. And we're gonna brown this guy for a good solid 5, 6, 7 minutes until they're basically, all the red is gone out of them. And at that point, we're gonna add in the rest of our goodness for our chili. So let me get this guy moving here and get this ground beef all browned up nice. And we'll see where we're at. All right, so all the pink is basically out of the ground beef. If there's a little pink in there, it's not the end of the world because you're gonna continue to cook it once you add all the other stuff in. So at this point, we're literally just gonna add all that stuff in. So our 1.5 cups of beef broth, that's gonna kind of provide a little bit of a deglazing, I guess that's called, on the sides and bottom of this, okay? Your full can of diced tomatoes, liquid and all. Your can's worth of kidney beans. Half of the can of tomato sauce. We only need 8 ounces of tomato sauce for this. You know, so we couldn't find an 8-ounce can of tomato sauce this week, so we went with a 15-ounce, and you just gotta, you know, use half of it. Then you can just freeze the other half for the next time you make this wonderful chili, okay? And we need to add in our entire can of the tomato paste. It's kind of a little bit of a pain to get that stuff all out of there, so use a little rubber spatula. And if you don't get it all, not the end of the world, but now it's all over my rubber spatula, so gotta sort of use that to its advantage here. Scrape all that stuff off. Okay. And we add our wonderful and beautiful spice mix that we made earlier. Put that in there. We're gonna give this a good solid stir. We wanna get all these wonderful flavors incorporated together. Try to make sure you break down that tomato sauce, the tomato paste. It sort of gets a little bit, you know, well, it gets a little stuck in there, so you just gotta like make sure you stir this up real good here. Oh yeah. Get it all nicely incorporated, okay? We're gonna turn this guy up to high, and what we wanna do is we wanna bring this to a boil and then turn it to a low, gentle simmer, and we wanna simmer this to kind of get all the flavors mixed together real nice for about 20 to 25 minutes. so that it gives us a nice, real rich flavor to this, okay? So just sort of putting it all together isn't really sufficient. We need these flavors to sort of really break down together. So we're gonna bring that to a little boil there. It's already starting to boil a little bit for me, so I'm gonna keep stirring this around. Okay, once it starts to really boil, we're gonna turn down the heat to like a low. We're just to put on a nice little simmer. Let's turn that down to low. Just till you see a little bit of bubbles going on there. Maybe not quite right. Well, it's got a few bubbles there, but nonetheless, let that guy boil a little bit. And you're gonna simmer that for, like I said, 20 to 25 minutes. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and let that simmer, and we'll check back in 20 to 25 minutes. So just in case you're wondering, it should be about this kind of a little tiny simmer like that. It's gonna look a little funny, but resist the temptation to stir. You're leaving it uncovered. If you cover it, it'd probably be fine too, but we always do ours uncovered. That way it fills the house with this wonderful, delicious smell of fresh chili when people come home from work. So nonetheless, so you wanna kind of let it simmer like that. We're about 5-6 minutes in here, maybe a little bit more. So we're gonna keep letting this guy go for another 15 minutes or so, and then he'll be done. All right, we're 20 minutes in to that little slow boil. Whether you got 20 or 25 minutes kind of depends on how thick you like your chili. 20 minutes for me is like really the best kind of spot for that. So once that comes off, oh man, look at that. Give it a nice stir. Oof. Nice and thick. See, that's why we let that boil down a little bit, so it gets nice and thick like this, okay? So now you're gonna let this rest for 5 to 10 minutes. That'll also help it cool down from basically the surface of the sun here. So we're gonna let it cool for 5, 10 or so minutes, and then we'll serve it up. All right, it's rested for 5, 10 minutes or so, and we're ready to go at this. Get yourself a nice, ooh, look at that. Delicious chili, oh man. Pair that with some fresh homemade cornbread and some homemade honey butter. What more can a guy ask for? All right, delicious homemade chili, not too difficult. You can literally do this on a weeknight. Just make sure you have the beef ready. Do a little bit of chopping of some onion. You can even prepare the spice bowl ahead of time. I mean, it's a simple, easy recipe, not totally from scratch, but it's delicious on one of those nights where you just want a real hot, spicy meal. Nothing beats chili. So, till next time, I'm Rev Blake Dog. Enjoy.
A Rev Blake Dog production.